In this video, we're going to be looking at another very important component of LangGraph's Graph API, and that is edges. LangGraph Graph API edges. Now, we've looked at nodes, and we describe nodes as the processing units in your graph. They are the main action points. They are the action takers. Now, what are edges? Edges define the flow of your workflow. They are your routing logic. They are how you move from one node to another, and you can move directly or you can move conditionally, as we're going to be seeing very, very soon. So like I said, edges determine the workflow. They determine when to start the graph, they determine when to stop the graph, and they basically manage the sequence of communication between your nodes. So edges, let us represent them as arrows. Let's say they're arrows. So if you need to move from this node to this node, you add an edge. Yeah, this is what an edge is. That's the mental model. So I want to go from this node. Let's use an email example. We want to get user input for an email. Then we want to draft the email. I want to send the email. So let's say here we get user input. Here is where we draft the email, and here is where we send the email. So this is the action we want to do first. Then we want to perform this action, then this action. So we have to first tell our graph to start from this node. We have to tell it to start from this node. So for that, definitely we will need our start node, which is the node that determines or points to where to start from. And for us to use this start node to tell our graph to start at this very node that takes user input, we need an edge. We need to connect an edge. So we need to say, go from here to here. So we go from here, we take user input. Then the next thing, we want to use that user input to compose our email. We want to compose our email. So we need to tell it to move from this node to this node. And we also use an edge. And when we are done drafting the email, we also want to send the email. So what do? We take another edge and we say go from here to here. Go from here to here. And when we're done with all the operations, when we're done with our graph, we can simply go to our end node. And how do we go to our end node? We also use an edge rather. We also use an edge to go to our end node. Yeah, I put 5 here for some reason. This is not 5, this is end. Let me correct that. Okay, so we go to our end node. So you see, our edges are our routing logic. If nodes are our action takers, then edges are our orchestrators. They're the ones that says this is the next thing to do, then this is the next thing to do, then this is the next thing to do. And it can also say these are the next couple of things to do, as we'll be seeing later when we start working with parallel workflows. But basically, as you can see, our edges, we use them to go from one node to another. We use them to define our routing logic. Now, there are two types of edges. What we are currently seeing is what we call a normal edge. Let me just put that here. Come back. Normal edge. Normal edges. So they are direct. They basically just go from one point to another point, and they are defined explicitly. Go from this place to that place, from point A to point B. Now, aside a normal edge, we also have conditional edges. Now, with conditional edges, we can dynamically move to nodes. So based on a condition, we can say, oh yeah, if email body is empty, go to this node that requests for a body of the email. But if the body of the email is not empty, that means we have the email we want to send, then go to this node that sends the email. So we can do conditional, we can have a conditional logic with how we route to our nodes. Now, there's also, LangGraph also kind of separate out some edges as conditional entry edge and normal entry point edge, but everything is still just normal edge and conditional edge. It's either it is straightforward or it is conditional. That is still the whole gist of everything. So these are the two types of edges that we have in LangGraph. And based on your operation, if your workflow is defined, if you know that you want to just go from this node to the next node, use a normal edge, use a direct edge. But if you need to check a particular condition to know which node to go to, you can even be between 4 different nodes. You want to determine which node to go to between 4 different nodes. You can use conditional edges rather to route to the node based to a node based on a condition. Now, before we go to VS Code to check out how we can work with edges, to add an edge, you simply use the add edge function. So when you set up your builder using state graph, you can then say builder dot add edge. Let me bring this down. Then bring this here. Yeah. So add edge, and in add edge, you use add edge to add normal edges. Yeah, use them to add normal edges. So you simply say go from this node, let's say node A, and from there go to the next node, which let's say is node B. So that's how you add a normal edge. So this is how you add a normal edge. Now, adding the conditional edge is a bit different. Now, a conditional edge is defined with a function. Let me just get a new box for that. Let's get a new text box for that. Meanwhile, let us shift this to the side. Shift it to this side. Get another box for that. Yeah. So to add a conditional edge, you say builder dot add conditional edges. Now, the first thing that goes into here is the node that you want to route from, the node you're currently in. So let's say node A. Then the next argument that goes into this is a function, a routing function, a pure Python function that can take in state. That function can also take in state in case you need some state variables to determine the parameter you want to use to check your conditional logic. You want to use to run your conditional logic rather to know the next node to go to. So we have a routing function here. And that function is going to return the string name of the node you want to go to based on the condition. So you can say if let's say if 5 is less than 10, then go to node B. You return node B as a string. Or go to node C. You will return node C as a string. So you basically return the string name of the node that you want to route to. If you want to do parallelism also, you can return a list of nodes, so it will just route in parallel to those nodes. And if you want to, sometimes if you don't want to return the node in the function itself, if it's just a pure function that returns true or false, you can add a dictionary here. The dictionary is going to take two properties. One is true, Boolean, and the other is false. So here you can say, let me close this dictionary. Here you can say if the condition in this routing function is true, that's whatever you return. Now you have to return a Boolean from your routing function. If you're going to use this style, you have to return a Boolean from your routing function. And you can say if true, then go to node B. Let me just put B here so I can save space. If true, go to node B. And if false, go to node C. So this is another signature. This is another syntax for add conditional edges. So you can either do it this way where you return a Boolean from your routing function, and if it is true, it goes to this node. If it is false, it goes to this node. Or you can just say, you know what, I'm going to return the node from my routing function. I'm going to return a string value from my routing function, which is the name of the node I want to route to next. So yeah, that's how you add conditional edges. Let us edit to VS Code and see how we can work with edges. So now that we understand what edges are and how they work, let us write some edge code. Back in VS Code, I'm going to create a new file and call that edges-demo.py. Now, in this demo, we're going to be creating 4 nodes. We're going to have a graph that has 4 nodes. And let's just assume they are node A, B, and C. Node A, B, C, and D. Those are our 4 nodes. Now, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to directly go from node A to node B with an edge. Then we're going to conditionally go to node C or node D using a conditional edge. So we're going to be able to see normal edges and conditional edges in action. Let's get started. First, let's just bring in our dependencies. I'm going to say from typing, Let us bring in typed dict. Typed dict. Okay. And we're going to go into LangGraph graph and and bring in our graph tools. So state graph, start and end. So that's good. Now the first thing we're going to do is create our class. That's the first thing we do. So let us create graph state. Let's pass in typed dict. And here we're going to simply have two state variables. The first one is going to be input, which is for user input. And the next one is going to be something called execution part, which is basically going to be a list. And that list is going to have the nodes that we hopped through. So it's just going to show us how we executed, whether we went for A, B to C or A, B to D. So let's do that. Let's say input, string, and execution part. And that's going to be a list of strings. Yeah. So those are our two state variables. And now we can start creating our nodes. Now first I'll do node A. I'm just going to call it node A. Just call them node A, B, C. So this is going to take in states, graph states. And yeah, that's all it needs to take in. It will return a dictionary. You can explicitly say that, or you just allow LangGraph to do that for you. Then yeah, we're going to put a statement to say executing node A. And what we're basically going to do here is that we're going to add this hop into our execution part. So I'm going to say new part equals state. No, let's not do this. Yeah, state dot get execution part. Get the execution part. If it's not available, we'll just use we'll set it to an empty list. And we tell it that we just want to tack on node A as our first hop. We tack on node A, and since we are setting a new execution part, we're just going to update the state and say execution part, and that will be set to our new part. So it adds node A to the list. And that is good. So we have our node, it just pays printing, executing node A. Then we add node A to the execution part. I'll just return that update to our state. Now, what every node is going to be doing in this demo is basically the same thing. They're just going to add to the execution part that, yeah, I was here, I was executed. I was here, I was executed. So I'm just going to take this function and create 3 other versions of it. So say node B. This will be node B. Any other? Yeah, node B. Yeah. So yeah, just say node B. Then come down again, and this will be node C. Okay. So and lastly we have D. So let us do the update once again. D. So we have node A, B, C, and D, and what they do is just add themselves to the execution part. So I'm just going to collapse all that. And like I said, what we want to do is that we want to route from A to B directly. So that's a normal edge. But from B, we want to dynamically route to either C or D. From B, we're going to dynamically route to either C or D. So let us write the code that is going to do that for us. Now, like I said, a conditional edge is a function. A conditional edge is a function, so we have to define it as a function. So I'm going to call it should continue. Should continue. And like I said, it can take the state, because we'll definitely need something in the state to run our conditional logic. And let us say we can actually instruct it from our input. So from our input, we can tell it, oh, go this way or go that way. So let us then say if from our input, from anything the user types into our input, we get go to C. We get go to C in state input. So if there's go to C in state input, then we want to return node C. Else, we'll simply return node D. So basically, we have a function that checks whether we have go to C in our input, and if we do, it's going to return node C. If not, it's going to return node D. Let's just put some print statements around there just to show some execution part. So I'm going to say print evaluating conditional edge. Evaluating conditional edge. Then here we'll say print continuing to C, and here we'll just say continuing to D. Continuing to D. So that should be enough. This is the function, this is the conditional function that is going to run when we are adding our conditional edge. So now that we have this, let us start setting up our edges using the add edge function. First, we need to build the graph. So I'm going to say builder equals state graph. And we're going to put in our graph state. Graph state. Next, let us add all our nodes. Now I'm going to be adding them as node A, node B, node C. So I'm just going to say add node and pass in the functions themselves. So node A, this node, the name will automatically be node A. And I'm going to do the same thing for nodes B, C, and D. So B, C, and D. So we have all our nodes added. Now let us add our edges. Let's add our edges. Now, like I said, we want to go directly from A to B, then conditionally from B to either C or D. So first we want to go from, we first want to kick off our graph. So we first need to add the edge. That will be using add edge. We need to first go from the start node, that is the entry point node, the start node, to node A. So this tells our graph to start from node A. So we start, then we add another add edge function, and here we want to say go from A directly to B. Go from A directly to B. Now this is a normal edge. This is also a normal edge. These two are normal edges. They explicitly define the node to go to. Just say go to this node. It's direct. Now once we are at B, we want to conditionally go to C or D. So in this case, we have to say add conditional edges. Add conditional edges. And where are we coming from? Or where are we currently at? We are at B. And then the next thing we put is our routing function. Should continue. Should continue. And inside should continue, we've already set the logic that if there's go to C inside our input, it should go to C. If not, it should just go to D. So we have that in place. And at the end of the day, in our final state, our execution part is going to show us how this played out. So we have added our edges, and now we can, to terminate the graph, we'll add both C and D to end. So once node C is done, end, that's if we go to C. And if we decide to go to D also, once it's done, it can simply end. So that's all good. We have all our edges set up, and now we can build our graph. So graph equals builder.compile. And now we have a graph that we can test out. So I'm going to say test the graph. Test the graph. So how do we test this graph? Definitely we test it by passing an input. So in the first, let's say in the first example, we don't want to mention that we're going to see. So I'm going to say initial state 1. We set an input. And inside our input, we just say hello LangGraph is awesome. Hello, LangGraph is awesome. These are our initial state. And you can see inside this input, there's nothing like go to see. There's nothing like go to see, which is what we're looking for here. There's nothing like go to see. Let's come down, and here we can say final state 1 equals graph.invoke. We pass in initial state 1, and here we can print final state 1. Can print final state 1 so that we can see what our final state looks like. And we're going to check the execution part to see how this graph flowed. Let's save this. Now let us pull up our command line, clear it. Then we run the function Python edges demo.py. Hope we don't have any issues. Let's hit enter, and bam. So here we have executing node A, so we hit node A, executing node B, we hit node B, then we got to the conditional edge, and it continued to D, and it said executing node D. So there was no go to C in our input, and as you can see, the execution part says node A, node B, and node D. No node C. Node A, node B, and node C. Now, let's say we change that. Let's say we switch things up. Let me clear this. And we just say hello, go to C to continue. Hello, go to C to continue. Let's try this out. Let's see what we get from this. Pull this up. Run the file once again. And now we see executing node A, executing node B, evaluating conditional edge, then continuing to C. And it says executing node C. And if we look at our execution part, we see node A, node B, and node C next. So it decided to go to node C instead of node D. Awesome. Simply awesome. So in this video, you've seen how to work with edges, and you've seen how to define a normal edge, and also how to define a dynamic edge using the conditional edges in LangGraph.